Hello everybody, Cone Dodger here. Welcome back to Automation. I'm going to continue our Japanese 90s engine recreation series or mini-series or whatever this is turning out to be. I'm going to continue on. We started with some Toyota engines last time with the 4AGE. I'm going to go and modernize a little bit and go for the S-series engines, which will include the 5SFE, the 3SGE, 3SGTE, as well as the 3SGE beams motor. Alright, so we'll start out with the lesser of all the engines, and that is the 5SFE. And that is the motor that is found in both the second generation SW21 MR2 in the States, as well as the 5th generation Celica, and I believe even the 6th generation Celica. It also found its way into a plethora of other Toyota vehicles, but most notably in those two. It is an inline 4 with a cast iron block, and it is a 87.1 bore and a 90.9 stroke. If I could get there. 90.9. So it's a fairly long stroke engine, which we've seen in the past has caused some issues within automation. But this is a fairly low revving engine. I personally own a SW21 with one of these, and I can attest to the fact that they are indeed not the highest revving, and they don't get very happy in a high RPM range, so I think we'll be alright there. Everything appears to be cast from what I have researched and figured out. Top end, they are dual overhead cam with 4 valves per cylinder, aluminum head with 9.5 to 1 compression. These engines are kind of known for being, they were obviously made for some of their sports cars, but they're kind of not very sporty. So we'll go with a fairly normal cam. No VVT, no VVL. They are of that 90s era engine, but they actually have a bit of an 80s look to them with the fins. Let's see. I think I'm going to go with... that looks too square. This is always the toughest decision. I think I'll just go with this one. That one looks close enough. They are kind of like that machined aluminum look. So, yeah, we'll just go with that one there. Aspiration, they are naturally aspirated. Fuel system injection. Our multi-point, single throttle body. We'll say standard intake, and they run on regular unleaded. Wow, that one's defaulted to extremely lean, but let's richen that up a little bit. There we go. I'm not going to get too carried away with the timing advance for now. We'll go with like a 65 maybe. RPM limit is only 6,300 RPM. That's one I forgot to do. Let's bump up the quality on the bottom end. What the hell, voice? Alright, so let's take that quality up to maybe a 10. Just try and keep it together. If it ends up not having any issues, I'll remember to turn that back down. But as far as the exhaust system goes, they came with just a short cast from the factory. I think they came with a 2¼ inch exhaust system. We'll go with a 3-way cat. Came with only a one muffler setup, obviously in the MR2. Might be different in say a Celica or Camry or whatever. But we'll just go with a first reverse flow or straight through. I think it was a reverse flow, but none on the second one. Let's try that out. Remember that. You're looking to make 135 horsepower, actually 130 to 135, it changes per year, and 144 foot-pounds of torque. I think that could be the first time I've ever come so close on a first try. And that's probably due to the fact this is a pretty... I hate to talk bad about it. I do really enjoy the engine. It's a lot of fun to drive. It's kind of it makes the car so you can just kind of thrash on it and it'll take it, even though it's not lightning quick. Let's see, 137 horsepower at 6,100 RPM. It's a little bit more power and a little bit later than stock, or what I'm showing it should be making. And 144 foot-pounds is exactly right, but it's making it way too early. Showing 144 at 4,400 RPM. So what I'm going to do is back down the cam even a little bit more, as well as I saw that the bottom end was working fine. So bring that down a hair, just so the cost is more in line with reality. Let's see, what can we do here? Advance the timing a little. The fuel looked good. Now that I think about it, that lower cam profile is probably not going to help that torque curve any. That it did not, although it has a very flat torque curve, which is true to this engine. The horsepower is down, but it didn't bring down the RPM at all. So let me see what I can do with that. Just do a quick test just to see. You see that brought it down and brought the torque curve up. So now all I need to do is actually just increase the power with that same peak. So how can I do that? I could... Got some more room to play with the ignition timing, but not that much. Let's see, 82, 81. Might still be knocking, that seems pretty low. Pretty low. Yep, just barely. So one interesting thing about this engine is that it uses a sequential firing order, which is something kind of uncommon to most four cylinders. Wow, still really down on power. That is not something you have the luxury of choosing in automation, and it's kind of irrelevant to the point that it doesn't make huge drastic changes to anything. I just thought it was one of those little interesting tidbits about it. Here we go. Oh, we're still knocking. Jeez. Alright, so no more knock, but power's still too low. And we kind of got that low torque curve back. try. This is a sports car, so it came with an MR2. It came with a side induction airbox, so we'll say that was a performance airbox. Just trying to free up some power. Not really. Not really. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring that cam profile back. So when I say sequential, you'll see it here. In most 4 cylinders, it'll go 1, 3, 2, 4. Still too low. In this engine, it would go. In this engine, it would go 1, 4, 3, 2. So it's firing the outside, then the inside, outside, then the inside. So I've read that it's uncommon for fuel-injected cars to have this, but was more common back when carburetors ruled the world, and that is because of the way it dissipates heat across the top end of the motor. When you're firing the inside and the outside like that, it tends to gather a little bit more heat in the head. Obviously, Toyota was able to work around that, and it creates a little bit smoother running engine when you have it set up sequentially like that. But moving on, we're still a little bit short on power. So let's increase the top end quality and the fuel system quality just a hair. And bring back that cam profile just a little bit more. Okay, so we're pretty much where we started now. I don't know that there's much else I could do with it. Just want to get that down a little bit further. That seems about right. That's a nice flat torque curve, so even at the 4,000 RPM range, it's still making about 140 foot-pounds of torque. So that's well and good. I think that'll be it for this motor. In the future, that'll give me a nice. You can see it's a pretty cheap motor, $600 bucks. Of course, I'm in the year 2013. Let me change that real quick. We'll bring that down to about 95. Let's see. Still $727. So it's a very. Why all of a sudden are you knocking? Why? Oh lordy. Oh man. Changing the year has had a very negative effect on some things here. Let me reduce the timing a bit, increase the fuel mixture. Yikes. Still got a little bit of power to find there. So I thought it was done, but not quite. I always forget to change the year. And I suppose they're taking into effect that in 95, their casting techniques and technology was not as advanced as it is today. Strangely, that's actually put us a lot closer to the numbers we were supposed to see. So there you have it. I'd like to get that 1 extra horsepower though. Not that it makes that much of a difference. But just for the sake of being true to the specs that I know. Oh, freaked it out. Okay, there we go. So that, for real this time, that's it. This is the 5S FE. Like I said, a good baseline motor would be great in your family car. Would also be a great base model sports car engine. So let me name that one real quick. Save and done. Alrighty, so moving on, something a little bit more exciting. The 3SGE. I'd just like to draw a little comparison here. Very similar for the KA versus the SR is the 5SFE versus the 3SGT. Sorry, versus the 3SGE. We got a inline 4 once again, cast iron block once again, but it is similarly to the SR20, a 2.0 liter square engine with an 86 by 86. That's not a comparison I ever really see. I never see people compare the 3SGE or GTE to a SR20, but they really do have some similarities. It does feature a cast iron crank, cast conrods, but it also features the hyper-eutectic cast pistons. Actually, that's what I'm guessing. I did read that it featured a aluminum alloy for the pistons. Oops, I've selected the wrong one. There we go. That should help our bottom end out quite a bit. We can increase the quality on that a little, but this is a square engine, so it should be alright. It is dual overhead cam as well. 4 valves per cylinder, aluminum head. And the 3SGE has a 10.0 to 1 compression ratio, so pretty high. Still in the normal range, but it's getting closer to that high range. We'll say it has a normal cam profile, no VVT or VVL in this version anyway. Similarly styled to the 5S FE. They are all in the same family, but really they don't have too much in common. Let's see. This motor actually has a pretty square valve cover, kind of similar to that. Actually, it's probably pretty similar to this one here. You don't get too good of a look at it. Featured in the MR2 or the Celica is very buried underneath the intake manifold, so not too good of a view of it. Just go with the white cover for now. That might be a little square and a little bit more 80s than it really is featured, but it's close enough to make it work. We're going to be building the 3SGE first, so that it's naturally aspirated. Multi-point, single. We'll say performance intake once again. This engine is running on regular unleaded. So like I said, it's all very similar to the 5S up until now, because this motor is a little bit more of a high revving engine, up to 7,000 RPM, which doesn't sound like a lot, especially in comparison to, say, you know, your Hondas or motors like that. But these are fairly large motors, and 7,000 RPM is actually a pretty good number for them. We'll say it came with a short cast from the factory. They were pretty cheap with those exhaust manifolds back in the day. They've wised up now and are starting to use at least tubulars. But short cast for now. Oh, almost forgot again. We'll go with 95 on this one as well. 2 1/4 exhaust system. 3-way cat. We'll do that reverse flow and a none. That sounds good. And let's see, we are shooting for 154 horsepower at 6,600 RPM and 137 foot-pounds of torque at 4,800 RPM. So quite a bit more horsepower, but a little bit less torque. Not gonna make it. Okay, so it looks like we are running into a little bit of knock, and I'm actually going to go with what's called premium unleaded on here. See, that's such a big step in between the two. We would be using 87 here, and I'm only showing 86.4. We'll go with premium unleaded just to stay on the safe side. And we were having bottom end issues, which I was a little bit worried about, especially with going up to 7,000 RPM. So now we should be seeing some real numbers. Looks like I need to go a bit more aggressive on the cam profile. So let's do that. That's making quite a bit of torque, but the horsepower was low and not at a high enough RPM. There we go. Now they're even at least. Let's once again increase our quality on the top end. This is a little bit more pricey of an engine, a little bit more sports car oriented. But I think 154 horsepower is going to be a little bit of a stretch. Really high on torque. Well, a little high on torque, but right on horsepower. So let's mess around with that a little bit. See if maybe advancing the timing and cutting back on the fuel. No, that's not going to help too much. We'll make it more realistic in the economy, though. As long as we didn't just make it knock. Well, okay, I don't really know how else to hurt this torque rating other than to still go up on the cam profile, which we may start breaching our. Now we're getting a little bit of a cami idle there, but we may start breaching our horsepower goals, so we can maybe back down some other things. But I'm not really getting any lowering of the torque. Alright, so that's 166 horsepower. So let me see if maybe I can back off on this timing a little bit. Or quite a bit. Okay, so I'm actually taking the timing down quite a bit because I think I might be able to hit the numbers right about correct. Nice down a little idle there. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. 155 horsepower is just about on the money. 143 foot-pounds of torque is a little high, but it's at the right RPM. So, I think that is it. I've got the year correct this time. Just name this one up. This is the 3SGE. So there's the NA version. Next up, I'm actually going to do Choices, choices, choices. I think I'm going to do the GTE. I'm the turbocharged version. Same motor, same era. Before I move on to the Beams motor, because that's actually a late 90s motor. So, yeah, let's do that. Shouldn't be too difficult of a transformation. There are, however, many versions of this engine. It was featured in the Celica GT4, featured in the Turbo MR2, and it was featured for quite a few years across a couple generations there. So there's just a ton of different. There was different turbos, there was different cam profiles, there was different compression ratios. So I'm gonna kind of go with a middle of the road in between the generations setup. That would be internal bearings setup. We'll say it's a medium, even though it's really a small intercooler. But we'll say, gosh, look at the difference between those two. Medium. That turbo, however, is gigantic. It's not that big. So we're gonna go first with just the economy turbo setup. Only producing 6 to 8 psi of boost. So we'll go with 7.1, and we'll see how that works from there. We'll probably need to go ahead and go with ultimate unleaded. Or just super. Actually, just super for now. And let's see about increasing that exhaust to 2.5. Let's see, we're limited on our headers for now, but I believe this is a similar setup to what they're using. And anything else? Nope. Let's try that one out. This motor is supposed to be making 221 see? Maybe I was forgetting something. Compression ratio. It's gonna come down to an 8.8, and the first generation ones anyway. And that's pretty common when it comes to turbo motors. You don't want to be running as much compression because of the added compression with the boost. So you don't want both, or you're gonna run into knock all over the place. So there's that. So our numbers are 221 horsepower at 6,000 RPM to 242 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. But torque remains the same at 224 foot-pounds at 3,200 RPM. Looks like tiny turbo is not going to be the way to go, just judging by the chart. You can see what happened there. Overran the turbo, was not able to make boost through the whole RPM range. So modification is needed. I'm gonna go up to 8 psi or 7.9, and let me try and get a turbo setup that will hold until 7,000 RPM or so. Alright, let's try that one out. Alright, well, small bump. Still dropping. Still dropping just a little bit on the top there. So let's go with just a hair bigger, especially on the turbine side, and bump up our quality there. Okay, so still pretty short on power, and I must say I'm finding that to be kind of a recurring theme. Perhaps the turbos are not as efficient at boosting power as they should be, because every motor I've made to try and replicate a turbo motor is not really feasible with the stock boost numbers. So I may need a little bit of a buff, because really to get to 220 horsepower even is going to be a little bit of a stretch, but we'll try it. Exhaust is big enough, right? Yes. Okay. We took a bunch of timing out of it, so hopefully bringing that back will help. Not too much, but our fuel octane is way low. Way low. Alright, so we've broken the 200 mark, but I'm kind of starting to run out of options here. I don't want to go too much more aggressive on the cam. It's starting to turn into a race motor that way. Could we get it to build a little sooner, perhaps? Alrighty, so I've been tweaking around with the turbo settings. I'm still running pretty close to factory boost settings. I got it building a lot sooner. There we go. Now we're starting to get numbers in their correct range, at least. A little bit on the late side. So that cam's starting to bite me. Only up to 8.2. I'll take it up to 8.4. I mean, in the end, if it's staying reliable and it's producing the numbers it's supposed to, I'm okay with the boost being set a little higher. Not too much change there. Alrighty, so I've gotten the power, it's too late, and I don't have enough torque yet. So what I'm going to do is come back down off this cam, and again go up on the boost to try and supplement the horsepower, but try and get them in the correct range. Judging by the chart, I'm a little short. Yep, I'm not seeing a huge increase in either yet. There we go. So now I've gotten those both, you know, in a more realistic range. But I'd like to stay under 10 psi of boost if possible. It doesn't look like it's going to be. So I think what I'm going to settle on is a pretty realistic boost, but just a later power band than what I'm seeing. Alrighty, so I think this is what I'm going to settle on. Let's see, we got over 200, so that's better. And 221 is exactly the right amount of horsepower, even if it is coming on a little bit late. But as you can see, it's up there even earlier. So we'll settle on that for now. Maybe in the future, some of these turbo settings get tweaked. We'll come back to these and tweak them to be a little bit more realistic. You can see it is a much more pricey engine than the 5S or the 3S. And that is the price you pay for that turbocharger on there. So there we go. There's another one in the books. But I've got one more that I'd like to do, and these are the kind of engines that fascinate me, really. Turbos are cool, don't get me wrong, but the high horsepower NA engines, I think, are even cooler. Usually, you know, your high revving, high tech engines, and that is what the Beams motor is. So it's the 3SGE Beams. Same bottom end, essentially. Nothing drastic changed there. But we're gonna get rid of the turbo. Going to go with tubular exhaust. By this era, this is the late 90s, early 2000s. We started to figure out that exhaust flow is important and stopped using those cast crappy exhaust manifolds. Let's see. We're going to go with a high flow 3-way cat. These were pretty much high performance engines. Gonna go with straight flow mufflers. Maybe just one even. Let's see. Biggest change, of course, is the style. These came with a nice, sleek, modern-looking valve cover, like so. We're gonna stick with the red version, or what's referred to as the red top. 4th generation motor. But we're going to increase this RPM limit all the way up to 7,600. So odds are I'm going to have to go all the way on quality for the bottom end. Well, maybe not. Let's see. Let's see what it can do. As far as tech goes, what they started doing was variable valve timing and lift. So we've got variable valve timing on all cams and variable valve lift, which is similar to, say, a Honda VTEC motor, and then it featured a variable lift, so I had extra lobes on the cams to provide a higher lift at high RPMs, so you could retain some of that economy down low and get tons of power up high. So this is the first time we get to mess with this in this series. Alrighty, so let's see what she does. Numbers before we go. Supposed to make about 197 horsepower at 7,000 RPM and about 150 foot-pounds of torque at about 5,000 RPM. So we'll see how close we can get to that. Judging by the chart, we may be overshooting that. Not quite, but yeah, I kind of figured we'd be doing some of that. So let's try and increase this all the way. Let's actually, I don't know if I want to do that or not. Increase the bottom cam and maybe decrease the top cam a little bit. Looks like we may have killed the horsepower a little bit. think that first setup may have been about right. Okay, so I'm still suffering from the bottom end issues, which I think is going to be the case. I don't know if I'm going to get away from that. I can run this thing pretty lean, and on premium, not super. Yeah, I don't know that there's any getting around that. They may have been using forged connecting rods. I don't know. Let me see if that... Nope, that's not the problem anyway. I wonder what the problem actually is. It says RPM limit, doesn't it? That's torque. Average, that doesn't help there. That does, however. But even that... So it's not the connecting rods. It's probably the pistons, so maybe forged is better. Oh, wow. So it would take a combination of titanium connecting rods and forged pistons to make that to work. I don't think so, so I'm just going to go back to what we had and kind of live with that. Boy, I don't know if I'm going to get that power any closer, really. It's actually making a bit too much. 200... or too much. Yeah, 197 is what we're looking for. There we go. So that's close enough. I'm happy with that. There are 4 new engines to the little catalog of 90s Japanese engines that we are going through. Good deal. So let's go back to the list. There we have it. And that gives us a nice little range of possible power plants for future builds. Already that's a pretty hefty little list to choose from, but I've got a lot more that I'd like to do. I think next episode I am ready to move on to perhaps some of those pretty iconic Honda motors from the 90s, which is a lot of pressure on me because there's a group of engines I know virtually nothing about. As iconic as they are, I just don't have any real hands-on experience with them, so I've got some research to do ahead of me. But until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.